Yes, exactly. I agree.
Oh man, so I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm in the middle of the
Nice.
country, so it's great to meet you. I'm looking forward to getting into your work and your life.
Yeah.
And to begin with, I want to know the pandemic. 4 years ago, we were trying to figure out how we were going to get out of it,
Mhm.
all of it that was going to affect us long term. How did you ultimately make it through that time period? And how did it change the way that you approach life now?
Well, God definitely helped. Without my faith in God, I don't really know that I would have had as much hope. My husband was home for a whole almost the year he was home because he works at a casino out here and they shut it down completely, which was unheard of. So that in and of itself was concerning for us. But what really got me through was being with my family. I had just had my 4th child at that time, so we call her our quarantine baby because I don't really think she was a year at that time, so she was pretty much only saw us during the quarantine, and it it gave me time to work on my first novel because that's when my first novel was actually published, was during the pandemic. So we had a lot of time to reflect on what was important in life. We had time to reflect on each other and, this life is very, it, we aren't promised tomorrow, basically. So it gave us a renewed sense of purpose of what was really important, to be thankful for what we had, that we had each other. We were more hyper aware of certain things. I don't know what you want to go into. I could totally go down what people used to call conspiracy theories, but now they're not so much conspiracy theories. But we were, like everyone else, we were learning new things about the government, about the medical system, all these different things. So our eyes were open to certain things that were going on in schools. We just had a lot of different eye-opening moments that really transformed who we are today, me and my whole family, the way that we live our lives. We're more grateful for it. We understand where we came from, who we are now. And like I said, I got to finish my book, I got to publish it. My husband got his job back. You know, it's just, it was a rough time, especially having 4 kids at home, but we made it through and God really helped us with that.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do right now in 2024 on a daily
Okay.
basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, third graders. It's career day. And one of the kids is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Ooh, well, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I watch my kids. Right now, I only have one home. I'm a podcaster. I do a podcast about Christian values. I also have written 2 novels. They are Christian fiction and they are more contemporary rather than, you know, for not like older style, just more contemporary.
So
But
what did
that's me in a nutshell.
that's exactly
I also make my own bread
okay.
and juice, so and
Excellent.
balms and stuff. So
Okay. You're busy, very busy. So
yes,
in the third grade, what did you want to be? What was your dream to grow up and become?
I wanted to be a missionary.
Okay.
Yeah, that it was either that or a teacher, but the reason why I wanted to be a teacher was very vindictive. I wanted to be a teacher so that I could give them pop quizzes and see them upset about it because I hated pop quizzes so much. So that would definitely not have been a good profession for me.
Well, that's what they say about police officers sometimes. Sometimes there's this idea that they get into the law enforcement to get back at
Mhm.
what was done to them. So it's definitely a valid part of reality.
Yeah.
So take me back to your childhood. How did you get to this point where you've become so diversified and your faith fuels you? How did all these seeds get planted and grow into who you are today?
I grew up in a Christian home. I've been going to church since I was probably in a car seat. I grew up in kind of a legalistic style Christian, which is more you follow the rules, you know what you do, you don't do. I didn't really question my faith. I didn't question why I believe what I believe in until I was an adult and strayed away from God. But I grew up in a family that was divorced by the time I was 12, so I had a broken family, but it was still Christian based on both sides, my dad's side and my mom's side. So I still went to church, I still did all the things that you're supposed to do as a Christian, but again, I never questioned why I did it. I just now I say I like to call it riding on the coattails of my parents' faith is what I felt like I was doing my whole life. When I was 30, that's when I really believed that I became a Christian. That's when my life became my life, and I started doing things because I wanted to do them, not because I was told to or felt I had to, because if I didn't, God was going to strike me with lightning or whatever. I did things because I wanted to, because I had finally grown up and realized it's my life, it's my choices. I can't ride on anyone's coattails anymore. So, I mean, I had a good childhood. My parents loved me. My dad, his way of loving me was different than what I was used to. I never really felt like he loved me while we were still at home together. Even after my parents got divorced, I had a hard time going to visit him because I just never really had a relationship with him. And the one with my mom was kind of broken because she was a broken person and there was some other issues that were going on in my life. But I mean, I have a good relationship with them now. My dad is one of my best friends. If I have questions, I'll call him. He comes to visit, because he lives in Tennessee, so he's probably not too far from where you are.
Yeah.
But I really get along with them now, and that's because God has restored what was broken, and I'm very thankful to him for that because I can't imagine not having my dad in my life. But during the time that we had a rocky time, I also had a rocky time because a lot of issues I had probably stemmed from not having a solid father figure. So,
So the one thing about being spiritual is that we all have these moments where we believe that God exists. Like without being just told to have faith, there's
mhm.
something that happens in our lives. When was the first time you felt like on your own, without anybody telling you anything, you felt this happen?
That would be the day that I came back to Christ at 30 years old. I was going through my second divorce. It was unwanted. I was in the middle of being called a prodigal. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's when you stray away from your Christian faith and you live your own life. I was in the middle of doing that. I had only been married 2 years, and that's when I moved to Connecticut, was during this marriage. So I had gone to church because I saw a advertisement at the theater for the church, and I said, "Okay, I'll just go. It's free babysitting." I had 2 kids at the time. I was a bitter, angry person. I just needed a break. So I went to the church. I heard the sermon. I felt God speaking to me, but I bold-faced told him as if he were standing in front of me. I said, "I hear everything you're saying, but I don't care. I'm gonna continue to do what I wanna do." And I left that church with the insistence that I was gonna continue to live my life the way I wanted to. A week later, that's when my husband said, "We're done. I'm getting a divorce. I already have an apartment," all these things. It threw me for a loop. I went into severe depression for like a week. I couldn't look at our son because he reminded me of his father. I kept crying. I felt sick. I couldn't eat, none of it. My mother-in-law at the time, she's the one who said, "You need to focus on your children and on God. They need you, and God needs you to get right with him. Don't worry about what's going on in your life. Work on things with God." So as soon as I got off that phone call, I dropped to my knees and I prayed and I asked him to forgive me for everything that I had done wrong. And I said, "Please help me heal my marriage if it's your will, and please just help me be different because I don't like what I've become." I got up immediately. I had no problems looking at my son. I felt healthier. I felt stronger. I fought for like 8 months trying to save the marriage. I was kind and gracious even though he was mean to me, said awful things to me, treated me awful. I was kind. He even noticed that I was different. He said it was like a light switch flipped. You're just different. But in the end, we did end up getting divorced. But I found my husband that I'm with now, I found him through church, through one of the people that I had met that first day that I went. She introduced us later. So that's the main reason, main time that I noticed that God was real for my own self. And it continued because he told me my dad wanted me to move back and live with him. At that time, he lived in California. During this divorce, he wanted me to move back so that he could help take care of me and the 2 kids. I told him, "I can't do that. God's telling me he's gonna take care of me right now." I've never fully relied on anyone other than my family because we were close. We all lived, like, within 15 minutes of each other until I moved away to Connecticut, which was so far away from my California family. So for me to tell my dad, "No, you're not gonna be taking care of me. God's gonna take care of me," that was hard on him to hear, but it was also a step of faith for me to trust that that was true, that God was going to do what he said, and he did. I didn't I didn't have any trouble finding a car, I didn't have any trouble finding anyone to babysit my kids while I needed to work 2 jobs. Everything fell into place. It was hard, it was not an easy experience, but it all fell into place and he took care of me and he's still taking care of me. He brought my husband that I have now, he brought him at a time when I needed him most. He's been my rock. When I'm weak, he's strong, vice versa. He's such a good stepfather to my 2 kids, but he's also a great father to his 3 kids. I mean, God has truly honored what he said he would do, which was take care of me if I trusted him to stay out in Connecticut when all I had was him. So that's how I know that he's real.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for you in your life?
Mm. My mentor, Susan, has definitely been a big part of my life. She walked me through my divorce. It was painful. There were several nights where I called and cried and said, "I can't do this anymore. I can't be nice to him anymore. I need help." And she'd just pray with me. She'd be there if I needed her. She was like a mother figure to me because my mom did not live close to me. I didn't have anybody in Connecticut. My family all lives on the West Coast. So she's definitely been my hero. She's still my friend, even though she moved to Georgia. We're still as thick as thieves, but we don't talk as often. But what I love about it is that when we do talk, it's like we haven't even missed a beat. And sometimes it can be months before we talk. And she's definitely probably my hero because she's got such faith in God, even in the midst of tough situations. She's trusting God. She's helping me to stay firm in my faith. She calls me out if I need it, and she's just the best.
Excellent. So, let me ask you this. If you can meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, spend time with them, learn from them, who would it be?
Ooh, that is a good question.
Huh.
Usually it's if someone's deceased, and I have an answer for that one.
Well,
But
we could open it up to the ghosts. We could definitely do that.
well, I would love to meet Jimmy Stewart because I love him, his movies and everything. That would be fun. But someone who is alive, I that would be a toss-up between Justin Peters, who is kind of an apologetist that I listen to a lot. I would love to pick his brain about the new things that I've been learning. But I think I'd also like to meet John Cooper from the band Skillet. I've been to some of their rock shows, but I would love to actually just talk to him because he's got such strong faith in God. And if you look at him, you'd probably just think he's just your run-of-the-mill rock star because he's got the tattoos and everything, screamer style, but he's so solid in his faith, and I love listening to his podcast. He's hilarious, but he's got such a passion that I would just love to talk to him about anything, glean what he's, learning. It would just be fun for me. So, yeah.
So well, let me ask you this. What is your motivation every day to find this balance between being a mother and to do all of these things that you do with your podcasts and with writing, and then to also hold enough back for yourself? How do you balance all that? What is it that gets you up and motivates you to do all this work?
God definitely is my motivation for getting up. He's the reason I breathe. I would not breathe if it wasn't for him. But my motivation, aside from my faith in God, is that I want my kids to see a healthy mom, a healthy lifestyle, and I want them to be successful in life. I want them to know that their mom loves their dad. I want them to know that even when times are tough, you can still make it through, that you don't give up because things are tough. You have to learn how to balance everything. I like to say it's like a pyramid because that's what our pastor says. God first, spouse, children, everything else. If you keep everything in balance, it's a healthy balance and everything will work out the way that it's supposed to. Might not be easy, but it'll work out. So that's what I like. That's what motivates me to get up in the morning is making sure that I make time for God, because if I don't, I notice it immediately. I'm more angry, I'm more frustrated, my fuse is shorter. But if I make time for God, then I have my mindset right, and then I know what I need to do next. And then if I fall short, I am very, very careful to make sure that I tell my kids, I'm sorry, I did this wrong. I don't sugarcoat anything with my children. I used to be very clammed up, very quiet, didn't make any waves, was a big people pleaser, did not want to hurt anyone's feelings. So I made myself into whatever they wanted me to be. I don't do that anymore, and I don't want my kids to be that way. So I'm honest with them, and I will let them know that they can be honest with me. So I tell them, Mommy's having a moment. You're going to have to leave me alone so that I don't blow up on you. And I'm trying very hard to be intentional because I do have a lot of things going on. During the summer, I notice it's harder to find a healthy balance as a parent because you're going this way, that way. You're trying to get them to see their friends. Maybe you're working, I have interviews I got to do. So I have to be very intentional on making sure I know when my triggers are coming or when I have hit my limit. And I'll be honest, I'm not successful all the time with putting time aside for myself because I feel guilty about it. And that's probably a mom guilt thing because I know a lot of my mom friends have the same problem. But that's probably the only area where I need to work the most is making sure that I leave some time for me and the things that I need to do to recharge. Which the things that I usually like to do to recharge is writing. That's where I recharge the most. Either that or I'll watch some Russian television because I'm teaching myself Russian. So,
Okay.
but yeah.
Okay. So is it hard to learn Russian? Has it been difficult?
Oh, yes. It
Yeah.
is not an easy language. I started back in high school. I was 16 and an older Russian couple was helping me. And this is the main reason why I don't want my kids to give up. I gave up after a month because it was too difficult. I was too shy, and you have to have inflection when you do it. You can't just say one word one way and expect that it's going to come across the right way. Sometimes the inflection is what you need to say the right word, or you might say it wrong. I couldn't do it, and I gave up. And I don't ever want my kids to give up because something's difficult. So when I got older, had all my kids, I said, you know what? I'm going to study Russian again, and I'm not going to give up this time. So whenever it feels frustrating, I will tell my kids, I said, this is frustrating, but I told myself I will not give up because I love Russian and I want to learn it. I said, so I'm going to continue through and push through until it is no longer as difficult. And keep telling them that's what I want you to do too. I don't want you to give up because something's hard. So, yeah, it is very hard, and at one point, it was starting to feel like it was getting a little easier, I could understand more, and then I had my or got pregnant with my 5th child, and I get really sick for, like, the 1st trimester when I have children, and I wasn't able to do it because I just was not feeling good, and if you fall off for even, like, a week, it just feels like you've lost it all. You
Yeah.
didn't, but it feels like that, so it's
Yeah.
really frustrating.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Hmm. Put God first. Make sure you're loving and kind to your family. Be honest. Those are probably the best things that I got out of life from experiences, from people talking to me, from sermons. You have to be honest. God knows everything. He sees it all. So there's no point in lying to him. Why are you going to lie to your spouse that you say you love? How would you feel if they did that to you? That's probably the best advice I've ever gotten is treat somebody the way you would want to be treated. And I'm constantly trying to think that through. And if I say or do something that doesn't seem like something I would want done to me, I immediately feel the guilt and I'll apologize to the person if I have to. I mean, I have a very good example of not doing it and how it made me feel and how I didn't really get to apologize to the person if you want to hear the story.
Sure.
Okay. So it wasn't too long ago. We were helping my mother-in-law clean out her house. And I was frustrated because the neighbor who owns the house was giving my husband trouble and was disrespecting him because they weren't seeing eye to eye on a situation. My husband was being very gracious and kind. He's a very soft-spoken person, and he was just trying to explain, and this woman didn't want to hear it, and she was browbeating him, and I got frustrated just because I was tired, hot, the kids were bored. I just wanted to go home, and I did not have the best of responses to her, and I started saying things to her that weren't kind, not bad language because I don't do that anymore, but it was not a very godly attitude. And she ended up calling me some choice words, which unfortunately my kids heard from up in the house. I went in the house. My husband couldn't understand why I was so frustrated. And I just told him, I said, I feel really bad. I said, I immediately felt bad as soon as I did it, but the woman had left. So it's not like I could have gone back to say anything to her at the moment. But I said there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes that was going on in my brain, in my heart, from past issues, past triggers that were bothering me. And I just felt terrible. I apologized to my girls. I said, I'm sorry you had to see mommy like that. I apologized to my husband for the way I acted. And I apologized to God, and I asked him, "May I please have a chance to apologize to this person?" Unfortunately, I never got that chance, and it still kinda haunts me. I don't know if I'll ever see the person again, but that was a very humbling moment for me to see that I did not treat somebody in a godly way, and had they had known that I was a Christian, who knows how that would have affected them. And it's just the fact that my kids saw me acting like that and they know was enough for me to say, no, I have to do better. So I am definitely intentional on treating people the way I want to be treated. And that is probably the best advice I've ever given. It's in the Bible. I've heard it all my life. And it just makes sense for anybody, whether you're a Christian or not. Why would you want to treat somebody in a way that you wouldn't want to be treated? If someone were to do to you what you did to them, how would you feel? Everyone can relate to that. You don't have to be a Christian. So that's probably
Yeah.
the best advice I've gotten.
Yeah. So, of everything that you've done and accomplished in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Aside from my kids.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, my novels, my podcast, I am a very shy person, very reserved. If I go out in public for a certain amount of time, go to a party, I'm done after a certain amount of time, just my energy drains. I guess it's introverted, but I love podcasting. It's so much fun. I enjoy it. I love writing novels. I'll plug in my headphones, I'll listen to music, and I'll just type away, and I could be there for hours just having fun. Like those things I think I'm most proud of is my novel that I have, The Right Way to Say Goodbye. That was one of my first novels, my actual first novel I wrote when I was 17, and I'm still trying to figure out if I want to publish that one or not. I gotta read through it. But the one that I'm most proud of is the one that took me about 5+ years to write. And during the pandemic, that's when it was finally published. But it was a labor of love. It was hard work. I went through many transformations during that. I don't know how many times I had to rewrite it from beginning to end. God really worked on me through that, and our relationship deepened. My love for marriage deepened because it's a story of a young man, a single father who's trying to save his marriage. So it's not completely about my life, but what I do with my stories is I put a piece of either my story or my heart or who I am into the story frame. So there's always a part of me because I've been told I should make my life into a story, and I've never really felt comfortable with the idea of writing my actual story into a nonfiction book. I prefer to write fiction, so I said to myself, that's what I'm going to do, is just somehow weave parts of me into my story. So that's what I did with this, and it was very hard to write because it emotionally affected me from what I had gone through, but I also just loved writing it because, like I said, I grew so much. I learned so much from writing it, and I just love the storyline. So that's probably my most proudest work is I stuck with it. And it took 5 years because I took some time off from doing it because it was hard and I got into a real severe writer's block and didn't know what the problem was. Eventually, I figured it out, and then the writer's block was gone. But it took me like probably 3 years before I figured that out. So I'm proud of myself because I stuck with it. I did another thing that was hard and I pushed through, and here it is today.
That's a perfect segue. If anyone wants to pick up your books, listen to your podcast, reach out, any of the good business, where do they go?
I have a couple websites. But if you in the show notes, there should be a contact me link that's going to be in there. That will take you to my podcast website. On there, there's a link to my books, which will take you to where you can buy my books. You can listen to my podcast, but it also has the contact form. So if you want to ask me any questions, comments, I'm an open book, and my podcast is called Honest Christian Conversations. I love having conversations with people. Like I said, I'm quiet, reserved, but if someone asks me a question, I am so ready to answer. I love sharing my story, all of that. So if anyone wants to contact me, link is it going to be in the show notes. That's the best way to find out anything you want to know about me.
Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time today. Continued success. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Take